like Neville Chamberlain, that we were going to talk to Mr. Hitler and somehow find some way to negotiate and make reason out of him. This is no longer the case. And of course, I think it's very clear whom I imply to be Mr. Hitler in this particular case in today's situation. I mean, clearly the president of Turkey. We have excellent people today who will give us the very complex problems of the region. So with no further ado, I want 1 minute, Yanis, to say something, the president of the Hellenic Cultural Center, and at this point, the person in charge of the World Hellenic Diaspora. Yanis?
Well, Mano, thank you very much for the introduction. Before I start, I need to inform all our guests and friends that this event is recorded. If you have any objections, please let us know right away. But certainly, the event is dealing with a very complex issue. I don't know how well we are informed. We are listening from bits and pieces from news, from whatever we read. And certainly, I don't know a lot. I am looking forward tonight to be educated from our friends, from Armen, and the Armenian society in general. So I want to, on behalf of the Hellenic Cultural Center, on behalf of World Hellenic Diaspora, I would like to welcome everybody to this cafe. Just to give you an idea what cafe is, the Cafenio as we call it. It's an idea that started from Dr. Manos Papadakis. It's a free form, I would say, discussion. Everybody can say something. Everybody can ask anything. You don't need to be formal to do a question. Today's this event is something that is about knowledge, is about freedom of thought. There is no bad question. There is no silly question. There are just questions. So, to the best of our knowledge, whoever has the knowledge will try to answer. And I'd like to thank, for sure, Dr. Papadakis, who happens to be also the vice president of the organization. Welcome, let's enjoy, and most importantly, this is not an event about a celebration. This is an event that will educate us for a war that is happening as we speak. So what I will ask you is put your heart, your soul with those people over there that they're being killed as we speak. Why? We will figure it out today. But at least that's how I can see it. I will ask everybody to mute your phone, your microphones, so everybody else can be able to hear what the speakers will have to say. And it would be nice to identify the little hand that it is on the screen. So when you want to talk, please raise your hand, and you will take you will have the floor to talk in the order that the hands will be, raised. Thank you so very much. Let's wish to have a very successful event tonight. Very knowledgeable, and with that, I turn it back to Dr. Papadakis, who is going to conduct the meeting tonight. Thank you. Manu, you are muted. Manu, you are muted.
Oh, yeah, I'm muted. Okay, I have two. Thank you, Yanni. I have two excellent guests tonight who actually are going to present everything. Philip Kanayan of the National Armenian Council of Houston, and Armen Hovanesyan, same organization. Armen is going to give the main talk. Both are doctors of jurisprudence. And with no further ado, please, Philip, it's your turn now.
Thank you, Manos. On behalf of the Armenian National Committee of Texas and the Greater Armenian Community, I'd like to thank the Hellenic Cultural Center in the Southwest for presenting this. We don't have a lot of friends, and we remember who our friends are. When I contacted Armin about doing this speech, or lecture, his comment to me was, well, why can't you do this? And Armin, I'm going to tell you, I can do it competently, but I'm going to explain why you were possibly one of the best people to discuss this topic. When I was going through your biography, I looked at it and said, you know, this doesn't describe who you are. You're one of the people who can probably talk about the past, present, and future of Artsakh better than anyone else. Your biographical details, you have an education at Berkeley, you have your Juris Doctorate at UCLA. You've been recognized for helping indigent people, primarily immigrants from Armenia and from these regions. You've served on the Armenian Bar Association 3 times as president. You helped found the organization. You presided over the Genocide Reparations Project. And you're currently on the board of directors. But if that was all I knew about you, I'd say I'd be impressed, but I know so much more. Your family over the last 50 years, which 48 of them are my lifetime, has been on the forefront of every Armenian issue in existence. I can't think you, your parents, your brother, your sister, all of you have dedicated your lives to our cause. And for that, I'll always be proud of you. So with that, I'm going to introduce my friend, Armin Hovhannisyan.
Thank you, Phil.
Armen.
Thank you, Martin. Let me say this. Evcharisto at first, and Shrangalatun in Armenian. And in the language of the land that we have adopted and that has hosted us after our families were exiled to this country, thank you very much to the Hellenic Cultural Center of Southwest Texas. You know, we're here because the bitter taste of blood and the continuing trauma of genocide has been revisited upon us within the last 3 weeks. I'm very happy, I have to say, that the Armenians and Greeks more than share a tragic past, but a very proud present and future of rebuilding their lives and their communities in countries, in home countries of Greece and Armenia, as well as in the diaspora. The Texans, the Greeks in Texas, the Armenians in Texas, the Armenians in California, and the world over. The purpose of today, though, is not to really focus on the crimes against humanity that were perpetrated against our peoples in the beginning part of the 20th century. The purpose of today, unfortunately, is born out of and comes from necessity. It's to talk about crimes against humanity that are being committed against the Armenian nation as we speak. There are the entire Armenian homeland is at stake. The entire Armenian identity is at stake. And the Armenians the world over have been motivated. They've been galvanized. They've really accepted this for that which it is, and which is the last battle. So for 100 years, after 1922, when your Greek families were forced out of Izmir and Smyrna, and after they were forced out of the Pontus homeland, and for the 100 years after which the Armenians were relegated to diasporan citizens of a former homeland, we've rebuilt our churches, we've established our schools, we've gone ahead and formed community centers, we've argued with each other internally, of course, but we've created a new Greece, we've created a new Armenia in our host countries in the United States of America. We taught our children the best we could how to speak Armenian and to speak Greek, as best we could to follow the tenets and the canons of the Greek Orthodox Church and the Armenian Apostolic, Catholic, and Protestant churches, without any denomination being more important than the other. we gave a sense of pride, and we gave a sense of belonging to our children. And it's our children now whose futures are at stake. The Republic of Armenia, and if we can put up the first map, just to give a little geographic context, most of you know where it is. Armenia is, sure, it's landlocked, sure, it doesn't have a lot of resources, it doesn't have a lot of things to sell to the outside world, but it is at the crossroads of civilization. It's always been caught between West and East, from between the Byzantines and the Persians, and then the Russians and the Turks, always caught in between, fiercely independent people, surrounded always by hostile neighbors. If you take a look at the map there, I want to draw your attention to the tanned shaped figure. And if you look at the profile, you will see that it is generally looks very much like the profile of a female, with her nose jutting out to a little bit, not jutting out to the left, and her hair and then going down her shoulders. And then you see the red shaded area, and that's the Republic of Artsakh. Maps oftentimes will put Nagorno Karabakh because that's the internationally known word for that area of the Armenian patrimony. But we would like to, and I would like to ask you to, when we refer to this, to call it Artsakh. That is spelled Artsakh. Nagorno Karabakh is not an Armenian term, it's a Russian-Turkish term, which still is nice in its translation, but I'm not even going to give it dignity there right now. So Armenia goes back thousands of years, much like the Greek civilization. Goes back to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th centuries BCs, like the Greek civilization. Like the Greek civilization who has been on its indigenous land for that many thousands of years and that many dozens of millennia, so too the Armenians have been living on this land from the thousands of years BC. And while we'll go back a little bit and talk about how we got here from 1918 forward, because that is probably the most relevant, let me just say this. Those people in that red shaded area are all Armenian. There are 150,000 of them. They're Armenians by birth, by education, by baptism, by all the rites of passage in life until death itself. And it has always been an Armenian province, dating back to at least 1000 BC, during the time of Tigran the Great. In fact, Tigran the Great was the great Armenian king that Armenians are very proud of, because he established an Armenian kingdom from sea to sea, from the Caspian to the Mediterranean to the Black. And Tigran was such a compelling national figure that he had several cities built in his name, and one of the Tigranakertas was, in fact, in that orange shaded region known as Artsakh. Over the next several hundred years and centuries and millennia, it remained in Armenian territory. Armenian churches date back 1600 years to Artsakh. They're there now. They started then. We were there just a few years ago with the Armenian Bar Association, of which I'm a very proud member. It's an organization that does wonderful work that we can maybe highlight later on. But we have all the hallmarks, not only of de jure, by law, independence, but de facto. William Saroyan said, a while ago when talking about Fresno, and Fresno is a city in Central California where I'm born. And my grandparents are buried there. My aunts and uncles are buried there. Some younger members of our family who lost their lives prematurely are buried in the Masis and Ararat cemeteries of Fresno, California. Masis and Ararat being after Mount Ararat. William Saroyan said, "A place does not belong to you until you've buried your child there." So, excuse me. So Fresno was his place and my place. And the reason why Artsakh is theirs and the Armenians is because we have buried too many of our children there. We buried too many of our children there in the last 3 weeks and in the last 30 days. It's preposterous for the Azerbaijanis or Turks to claim that this is their land. They're Johnny-come-latelys. Yes, there are civil populations there and freedom-loving Azeris as there may be Turks, and we will accept them with open hearts. But we will not accept the aggression of the flags that fly in their capitals and at their embassies, because those are symbols of tyranny. And so they make a very cheap and lazy claim, the Azeris do, that, oh, well, we descend from the Caspian Albanians who were there in the 17th century. Excuse me, that's like telling a Greek Cypriot who's been there for 3,000 years that when the Ottomans came in to Cyprus in 1570, then the clock starts anew. We have a message for them. The clock starts when the clock started. For the Greeks, it was thousands of years ago, and for the Armenians, it was thousands of years ago. And for 100 years after the genocide in 1915, we dusted ourselves off. We pulled ourselves up from our britches, as you did in your communities, and we stood up straight. What we would never have imagined was that little Yerevan, the female silhouette that you see there, the size of Maryland, just a fraction of what all of our historic homeland to the left of that. If you go just a little bit around in a circular, yes, go down along that way. That's all historic Armenia, and Lake Van a little bit to the east, just above it, Erzurum and Bitlis, all the way up to Trabzon, and east of that to even Kharpert and Sepastia and Dikranakert. That's the Armenia of my grandparents' civilization. That's the Armenia that was given to me by my grandmothers and grandfathers, not in a metaphoric, hypothetical way, through their touch, through their hair, much like the Greek grandmothers, the Armenian grandmothers, late at night, braided their hair. The man sat quietly, sometimes with friends, internalizing the trauma that has been wrought on our people, but always saying that there's a way out. You know, Charles Dickens wrote, and this is in The Tale of Two Cities, that this is the best of times and the worst of times, the age of wisdom and the age of foolishness, the epic of belief and the epic of incredulity, the season of light and the season of darkness. We balance all of those things personally in our lives, and we're trying to balance them in our national lives now. But it is an era of inspiration and darkness. Because since September 27, 3 weeks ago yesterday, the Armenian civil population of Artsakh, and on this map you see Stepanakert on the top right of the orange shaded region. That is the capital of the free and independent Republic of Artsakh. all along that eastern, southern, and northern red fringe where Azerbaijan is. They started launching, unannounced, unprovoked, massive, massive artillery incursions into the 150,000 men, women, and children sleeping at night. We have an army, the Republic of Artsakh does. It's been trying to defend itself with the aid of Armenia. But the Armenians are up against a much more complex and complicated foe. It's not Azerbaijan. It's Turkey supplying men and material, sending their generals to those cities just east of Stepanakert, their Turkish war generals, landing in the Ganzak, the Armenian word for Ganja, during the Russian Empire known as Elizabethpol, landing American-made F-16s that we have sold to Turkey to be used in the massacre in the 20th year of the 21st century against the Armenian people. That's one complication. The other complication, Mano alluded to it, is the geopolitics, geostrategies. But all those who you thought would stand at your side, and not materially necessarily, but at least in spirit, in articulation, in joining my sons and daughters on the streets as we march, to march with us. Those who have had themselves and their families be victims of crimes against humanity, the state of Israel supplying the technology for those monster drones which are being manned from Azerbaijan or from Turkish airspace, and they zero in on the civilian populations, to say nothing about the soldiers in Artsakh, and they decimate them. And it curdles your blood when on those videos you see the hurrahs of the Azeri soldiers after they have done in 2020 what they did also in 1915. And it's not only the material of the Turkey. They have positioned their populations to hate Armenians. They have become a hating community, and dare I say civilization, both in Azerbaijan and in Turkey. President Erdogan is saying, whoa, I hope Azerbaijan finishes what my grandfather started in 1915. President Aliyev of Azerbaijan says the Armenians aren't even worth the gum on the bottom of my shoe. They're not even good enough to be a servant vassal state of Azerbaijan. They are teaching their kids in school that the Armenian is the boogeyman. And so when you have developed a culture of hate, a civilization of hate against a victim population, the violator continues that he or she or it can operate with impunity. They are creating generations of genociders. Turkey and Azerbaijan are. As Turkey not only supports, but as Israel and the other flaccid countries don't stand up to show the backbone, especially in this situation, that you don't have to sell those weapons of mass human destruction to Azerbaijan, Israel. You don't have to do it. Yes, you get 40% of your gas from Baku, from the Caspian Sea. But if morality ever meant anything, especially to Israel, they complained that in American society during World War II, no Americans really got up and nobody went into Dachau and Auschwitz. And they didn't dismantle the Arbeit macht free slogan, work makes you free, that it was the Russians and the English. And so they go ahead and they castigate the American non-response to their plight. And now they are guilty of the same transgression and a lot more. Their materials are killing Armenian girls and boys and mothers and fathers. Before I close this opening, I said I would go to 1918 so that you understand not only the historicity of Armenian provenance and connection to that small patch of land the size of the state of Delaware, the Republic of Artsakh. In 1918, there were 3 Trans-Caucasian republics. There was Georgia there to the north, there was Armenia below it, and there was Azerbaijan to the east. And they created a Trans-Caucasian Federation, and they had a legislature called the Seim, S-E-I-M. They did that mostly as a defense mechanism against the onslaughts of the Russian, the competing empires. In 1918, these republics, not out of great courage, great audacity, not because they had experienced huge military successes, they declared their independence out of necessity. Georgia, Azerbaijan, then Armenia. Armenia had just suffered a genocide less than 3 years before and still was continuing to experience a genocide. And it fought tooth and nail with citizen soldiers right there where it shows Yerevan, if we can do it with the cursor, and where Ararat is at the Battle of Sartarabat, Gharakh Kilisa, and Bashabaran. And the Armenians of 1918 were able to repel back Kemal. Another thing that I will ask you as Greeks and Armenians not to say, in the same way that I asked you at the beginning not to refer to it unless we do it legalistically as Nagorno Karabakh, but as Artsakh. When Kemal is referred to, let's not call him Ataturk. He is not our Ataturk. He doesn't deserve that. He needs to be knocked off of that pedestal, not physically, but for the trauma that he has caused his own 80 and 90 million people, mostly many Kurds, in what is now Turkey. And so we were able to eke out a small, heroic republic from 1918 to 1920. From 1918 to and in 1920, we had to submit that because the Turks to the west and the Reds, the communists to the east and north, were strangling us. And the mothers and fathers of that small republic, who all they were hundreds of thousands of refugees from their homes in the Western Armenian homeland, said we would rather, for the future of our nation, submit to communism than submit to an everlasting death for the Armenian people. In 1920, from 1918 to 1920, that quote unquote disputed region of Artsakh was disputed then too. It wasn't clearly within Armenia and clearly within Azerbaijan. But don't make any mistake about it. The population was 80% Armenian. Our churches, our schools, our community centers, our political parties, they were all there, with also a Muslim population. And then in 1920, before Armenia had to give up its independence at the end of 1920. Philip Ganayan said something nice about my family, and I'm not going to say something nice about Philip's family, but let me say something true and eternal, for which the Armenian nation bows in respect to General Dro. Philip Ganayan's father is at the height of the pantheon of the leaders of that Republic of Armenia, of the movements which were established to preserve self-determination. And when in the spring of 1920, there were skirmishes over there right now in Artsakh, right there where Stepanakert is, right where Shushi is, General Dro, on his white horse, was at the front of thousands of Armenian volunteers and was about to once and for all claim Artsakh as Armenian land forever. Unfortunately, there was pressure from the Russians in Baku, from the Armenian Russians, and he was convinced that for the safety and security of the population to withdraw to Echmiadzin, which is the religious center for our Catholicos. In 1920, Armenia gave up its independence, as did Azerbaijan and Georgia. They became parts of the Soviet Union as 3 of 15 ultimately autonomous republics of the SSR. It was in 1921, and maybe Stalin getting a whisper from his Azeri-born wife, an Azerbaijani by birth and by faith, said that, you know what, just like Russia has done for the last 100 years, their end game is to preserve the imbalance in the Caucasus, the imbalance in the Eastern Mediterranean, the imbalance in Syria, the imbalance everywhere else. It works to their advantage. So knowing full well that this was an Armenian enclave meaning, you know, all Armenians basically, he awarded that territory to be within Azerbaijan, not part of Azerbaijan, an autonomous territory within Azerbaijan with its own governance, ultimately responsible to Baku, but nevertheless an autonomous oblast, as they say. And this is how willy-nilly he was. The day before Stalin awarded this territory to the Azeris, the day before, he awarded it to the Armenians. And in fact, the Baku general there said, you know what, we don't want it. Let Armenia have this. Nursultanov said that. But he changed his mind. And so from 1923 forward, the Republic of Artsakh was an autonomous territory in Azerbaijan. When the Soviet Union started crumbling in the late 1980s, when emancipation struggles started in the Balkans, in Eastern Europe, they really got their start here, in Artsakh. It was in 1988 that the Artsakh Tsis, the TSIS at the end of an Armenian name, is you are from there. So you are then Houston Tsis, if I was going to say it in Armenian. So they voted for their independence. That vote was taken in line with the Soviet Constitution at the time. But be careful what you ask for. Peaceful vote, full referendum, crushing majority of 99% saying we want to be actually not independent, we want to be part of Armenia. And then what did that do? Be careful what you ask for. Tens of thousands of Armenians in Baku and Sumgait and other cities in Azerbaijan were maimed and massacred and raped and decimated. There is no Armenian population in Azerbaijan anymore. We were cultural leaders, intellectual leaders in industry, in universities, but that hate was unleashed against the Armenians, that culture of hate. And then in 1991, again, the people of Artsakh voted in a referendum in line with the law of the land then, that we want to secede. We want to become our own republic. The Soviet constitution at the time said, Azerbaijan, you guys just checked out of the USSR. Armenia, you just checked out of the USSR. Georgia, you just said goodbye to us. Well, the Soviet constitution said at the time, not only can the independent SSRs decide to secede, but so can these autonomous territories or oblasts. And that's what they did. And so then a war started, 1991 until the early 1990s, and the Armenians were able to protect their patrimony, to reestablish their lives, to be under constant threat of war. And now it reared its ugly head again. I'll leave you with this in my opening comments, and that is, many of us have been to Artsakh. It's an idyllic place, a place that conjures images of Eden, with rolling lush hills, with brooks and rivulets, with nature at its best, and people who are simple, freedom-loving people, where there are only 150,000 of them. Why in their right mind would they try to attack a country of 10 million people to their east? They would never do it. And so while Armenians in Artsakh went back about their daily lives, having children, then grandchildren, teaching class, opening up the store, fixing the motor, baking bread, Azerbaijan was waiting. But it wasn't waiting in absentia, it was waiting with help. Help of the Turks, help of the Israelis, help of Canadian arms manufacturers that allow them to deploy with horrific accuracy the tools of a war against a civilian population. The first video we're going to see is a 4-minute video that was just produced today, and I want to give the proper attribution to my sister, a journalist, documentarian, Ani Hovanesyan Kevorkian, because what it does is it goes to that vein, the vein that through which, in Greeks and Armenians, runs the blood of overcoming, of turning the other cheek, of trying to get along. Then the other vein of the other animal, well, all there is a protoplasm and protein of venom and hatred. So Viken, let's put that up there to set the scene of how we're educating our children very differently.
Can you confirm that the sound is on?
It is not on. Let's start again.
Okay, one.
Sound will be important. Can you maximize it, Viken?
It is.
Violence erupted between the nations of Armenia and Azerbaijan on Sunday morning, with both laying claim to the Nagorno Karabakh region.
This has been a week in which the people of Nagorno Karabakh have faced assault from the air.
Very substantial damage to Stepanakert and also to the city of Shushi, where a large church was hit today.
A double hit on the cathedral there, when it was very clear that civilians and journalists were sheltering inside.
Having armed itself with Turkish and Israeli drones, the Azerian military has been stripping away Armenian defences around Karabakh.
Why do civilian structures keep getting hit?
No, we never attack civilians.
Under attack day and night.
It's a very bad loss of life, shelling of civilian areas.
The violence has killed hundreds. Thousands are injured.
On our way here, we actually tried counting all the ambulances that were rushing outside the city, and well, we lost count.
They're defending their own country, and they're being blown to pieces by 21st century mighty weapons.
Nagorno Karabakh, also known as Artsakh, is a breakaway region. 95% of its population are Christian ethnic Armenian, inhabiting the lands for centuries. It's also backed by the Armenian forces.
I think there's no doubt that Azerbaijan started this military operation.
Turkey is openly backing Azerbaijan. Syrian fighters from Turkish-backed rebel groups are now allegedly being sent to Azerbaijan to fight.
Armenia is defending the status quo.
Is there evidence of war crimes?
There is evidence of war crimes, yes.
The region's ethnic Armenian population are being forced to flee, leaving their men on the front lines.
We're defending our homeland, our family, and all those who live on this land.
Another bombing. Residents hurry back inside, returning to their underground shelters.
Almighty God, give us peace.
An Azerbaijani soldier kicks the Armenian flag out of the way in freshly conquered territory in Nagorno Karabakh and hoists the flag of Azerbaijan.
Turkey will continue to stand by its friend and brethren, Azerbaijan, by all means and with all its heart.
This is an Azerbaijani Turkish international terroristic attack, a policy of continuing the Armenian genocide.
Well, it looks like it ended a little bit prematurely, but so we can move on unless you can get, yeah, let's move on. That should be available on social media websites for you to see at your discretion.
Can I say this? Can we put the link of this video on the chat?
Yes. We can do it after the second video,
Yes.
okay? You don't have to do it right now.
Of course.
So with that, thank you for enduring my, I didn't want to get emotional, and obviously I did, but it's hard not to, when you touched your grandmother and you touched your grandfather and they touched you as a young boy, and you made a silent promise to them that what they survived, we would protect against for the rest of our lives, the memory, and never would we have imagined the reconstitution of the genocide. So thank you for your attention and for your interest. I'll be happy to follow with Mano's questions.
Actually, do we have the second? Are we going to show the second video we can?
Not right now.
Not right now. Okay. All right. So I'm basically moderating, so it's not me interviewing Armen on anybody else. Armen, thank you very much. It's very understandable to be emotional at these moments when your homeland, your fatherland, is being brutally attacked by the combination of a megalomaniac and an idiot. By megalomaniac, I mean pathetic. I mean President Erdogan, and the idiot is President Aliyev, who thinks that he's an important figure. Of course, you know, these are my personal opinions. I would like to invite you to give your questions. You can raise your hand, or you can even give them on the chat, which I'm actually monitoring as well. If you don't have questions, I have a few. Yes.
We have Grigori and Stella who had first the hand.
Yes. Stella here. Okay. So we'll start with Stella. Stella is my colleague and good friend from U of H.
Hello, Manos. Thank you for working and setting this up. I appreciate it all with the Hellenic Cultural Society. So thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Hovhannisyan, indeed, this is an incredibly emotional event. I find myself being very emotional at times, so I completely appreciate and understand your points. And you did come out as being very much influenced and impacted by this. I have a comment and then I have a question for you. So the comment, I would say, is the following. I don't think spending time on saying that Armenia looks like a woman or is feminine really helps in any way. I don't find that at all helpful, relevant, and you know, it's a waste of precious time we have to talk. So I think I would not mention Armenia looks like a woman. There's all kinds of issues related to that. I also would refrain from saying that Karabakhtis are Artsakhtsis, and I fully appreciate that as well, to call them Artsakhtsis, are simple. As an anthropologist, as a sociologist, the word simple has all kinds of negative connotations. And it puts it in a juxtaposition with people who think of themselves as very complex and very educated and very worldly. So calling them simple, I kind of think I understand what you're saying, but I wouldn't use that term for Artsakhtsis. So those are my two comments. Otherwise, I enjoyed hearing your presentation of the material. I do have a question that I don't think I heard you talk about, and I think it would be very important for everyone participating today, since you are a lawyer, about the impact of international law on this, because we're constantly hearing from social media, from everybody who's doing these reports, that this area, Artsakh, Nagorno Karabakh, belongs to Azerbaijan, and hence it makes sense that they want their territory back, and they point to international law. So could you say a few things about international law, about sovereignty of national boundaries, but at the same time, the fact that there's also international law about self-determination and how Artsakh has fallen between the cracks. And this is why it's a problem. This is why it has remained in this ambivalent state, because there really isn't international law to clearly indicate what's going on there. So if you can make a few comments about international law pertaining to Artsakh, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome, and I appreciate your strongly held beliefs. So in terms of what you in international law, there's a false tension, and I will tell you why it's a false tension when it comes to Artsakh's situation. They think that on the one end of the pendulum is a sovereign's right to territorial integrity, and on the other end of the pendulum, there's a people's right to self-determination, and never shall they meet in the middle. Well, that's a false dichotomy. That's a false pendulum. And the reason why is one needs to put it into context. The context which I tried to outline was that in 1991, pursuant to the applicable constitutional laws of the Soviet Union, the people of Artsakh voted to be free and independent. So to the extent that we're saying, is this lawful or not? It is lawful. That secession, no one has challenged that 1991 as being, a fiat, as hanging chads, as being non-compliant with international law. What has happened, Ms. Gregorian, is power politics. And because this is Artsakh and it is not Kosovo, we don't have a power that stands behind us, like in Kosovo, the United States and the Western world. We don't have even a single republic like that self-declared Northern Cyprus, that at least they have Turkey. To this day, nobody recognized the legitimacy of that republic. International law, let me give you a little primer on it, Ms. Grigori, and that is there's something called the Montevideo Convention of the late 1930s. And this is for everybody. And this is for everybody to know that the claim to statehood, not to the right to secede, to statehood, is embedded, is cemented in international law. There are 4 prongs that must be satisfied for a state to declare itself and to be independent. One is a permanent population. Artsakh has a permanent population. 2 is a defined territory, and you still can have sort of border skirmishes, and under international law, yeah, there is a defined territory. 3, you need to have a government. Well, for the last 26 years, we've had a government of the free and independent, or 20-some years of the Republic of Artsakh. And then you have to be sort of accepted by others to be able to enter into international compacts. That's a little tougher there, that one to satisfy. But I'll tell you this, the ceasefire in 2016 and the ceasefire of 1994 was an international agreement, and the Republic of Artsakh signed that international agreement. So when I say power politics, we were just talking, come on, let's not kid ourselves. We're dealing with NATO. We're dealing with the United Nations. Turkey has always been imagined to be this without which not that the Western world could exist with in its absence, which is we had our bases, Incirlik, this and that. They were Trojan horses, or they continue to be Trojan horses. But when you have the United States and other Western powers saying it's not worth our time now, by the way, there hasn't been anything by any international tribunal that has said that secession was illegal. And so what we don't have is what they had in Kosovo, that where you have a political will, where you impose on your neighbors to have a semblance of morality. And that's what they've been enjoying there for the last several years. We're hopeful. The Vatican, the Pope said something about the bombing of Aga Genselot's Holy Savior Church. The Armenian Bar Association issued an open letter to him today, not only to him, to the Catholicos in Antilias and Echmiadzin, our spiritual leaders, as well as the Catholic and Protestant leaders, to impose upon the Pope and the Vatican, because the Pope is a sovereign state which has recognized hundreds of states, that it add to the top of its list that it should recognize the Republic of Artsakh. He has great persuasive authority.
Thank you very much. I have George Argyros wants to ask a question. George, and Michael Alexander will be next. George.
Thank you. Thank you for this this introduction. I'd like to ask you, there was an article written, I think yesterday, published in the New York Times by an Armenian Turkish journalist from Istanbul. In the article, he said that in negotiations when they were taking place between Azerbaijan and Armenia, a swap of territories was discussed and something about exchange of population, but the talks were abandoned. Can you tell us something about this, please?
I will tell you what I know publicly, and that those are called the Madrid Principles or the Madrid Platform. So as I mentioned, after Artsakh declared rightfully its ability to be a free and independent country, they started a war against that fledgling republic, after which there was a ceasefire, and there were flare-ups here and there over the next 25 years or so. During the next 25 years, which brings us to today, during the last 20 years, there have been efforts to reach a diplomatic solution to this conflict. Among the platforms that were taken seriously, sponsored by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the organization, the OSCE, with the co-chairs of Russia, France, and Great Britain, that they were going to try to broker a peace. The swap of lands, kind sir, that you're referring to is that among the menu items apparently discussed by the foreign ministers of Azerbaijan and Armenia and others, was that there were some territories that the Armenian Defense Forces took control of as a security buffer during the 30-year-ago war. So I don't know about a swap of territories. I've never heard that Azerbaijan is about to give some territory back to Armenia or Artsakh. That would be a first for all of us. I think what's being under consideration, that there was this protective Kodi is the name in Armenian, belt of a handful of villages and districts, and that's what was under discussion. But the problem with the Madrid Principles is this. So it may contemplate the return of those lands, which have now been populated by Armenians, but that doesn't bring lasting peace and security, because the Azeris still have a hunger and a thirst to crush and take Artsakh and then and take it back and repopulate it. They want, make no mistake about it, they want, just like Armenia without Armenians, Artsakh without Armenians, and they won't stop short of that. But here's their thing. They say, okay, we'll take back the 5 territories, and then we'll have a referendum to decide on what happens to the rest of Artsakh. Well, excuse me, we had a referendum in 1991. Why are we going to do in 2021 that which we did 30 years ago?
Yes, Michael Alexandru. Michael, unmute yourself, please. If I don't have Michael, then I'm going to pass to Ara Karamanyan.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay, good. Go ahead. Please.
Thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this wonderful discourse. I would love to say thank you to Mr. Hovhannisyan for the historical perspective and also the emotional dimension of your presentation, because as Greeks, we're going through the same thing with President Erdogan, who all of a sudden woke up one day and he wants about 20 of our Aegean islands. I think his expansionist ideas almost reach downtown Athens, if you let him do what he wants to do. So it was wonderful to hear that. The Pan-Hellenic Federation is supporting your fundraising campaign by sending the email to all our members. There are thousands of members in Florida and on our mailing list, Facebook, etc. So thank you for all that. But I have a suggestion to make. The Pontian Greeks commemorate the genocide around May every year. The Smyrna Greeks celebrate it around September every year. And I think the Armenian genocide commemoration happens somewhere in between. What I would like to see, and I would like to use Yannis Ramidiakis as a conduit to our rapprochement, to get together. Let's talk about having a gigantic commemoration. Each individual community can do their thing, but we should have one in the United States of America, so everybody in this country will know one.
We lost you.
Michael, you got muted.
I got muted. I think that's a Turkish spies that are listening to our conversation. I would like to make sure that the American people and beyond know about the genocides, know what these people have done and what they continue to do. They will never understand Turkey unless they understand their past. Turkey has no history, has a criminal record, and the people have to know that. So let's get, Yanni, I leave it up to you to bring us in contact with the Armenian society and organizations, and we can work together. And my last comment is, I'm very sorry to say, but all the organizations that we grew up thinking that they will save the world, United Nations, NATO, European Union, are non-existent. They are spineless because of economic interests. And I'm not going to go to that because all of you know what they are. So let us work together and fight this common enemy. Thank you.
So at least in Los Angeles, where we had 150,000 Angelenos fill the streets for the March for Victory, as it was penned, had within that crowd Greek flags. I couldn't agree with you more. There has to be a lingua franca, a common language among us. And the common language is compassion. And some of that compassion takes the form of getting our bodies together at the other's church, at the other's community center, at the other's classroom. And then when we want to and have to make public statements and remonstrations, we stand together. And I would like nothing more for me to carry the Greek flag and you the Armenian flag at the next demonstration.
Anyway,
thank you.
Ms. Ara Karamanyan.
Mano, may I say something before we proceed?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right.
I would like to say that indeed the idea from Mr. Alexandru is tremendous, and I'm so glad to listen to our friend Armen, Mr. Hovhannisyan, that he's with us, and you need to know that we are with you. We are one family. We have the same faith. We have the same enemies. We have so many things in common, ancient history. So you will find us wherever you need us. And I commit at this point in front of everybody that I will take Michael's idea. I will get in touch with you and let's see where we can take it.
Thank you, Yanni.
Okay, thank you, Yanni. Let's proceed with Mrs. Ara Karamanyan.
First, thank you very much for this presentation and all the great work that you do. I wanted to ask you, as an Armenian, you understand my position on all these things. As an American, a proud American, it's so frustrating to me to see America's position regarding Turkey. They've hurt us. They've hurt our country so many times. They really squeeze us anytime we want to use the Air Force Base, Irslik, and they know they can take advantage of us because of that Air Force Base and because they know that that's our only military option in the region. Now, this is a this is going to be controversial, but we won't. Armenia itself won't allow an American base in Armenia, properly and understandably so. We have the pact with Russia, etc. But Artsakh, if Trump has shown himself willing to do things that are controversial. For example, putting the embassy in Israel in Jerusalem. Well, what if America made an Air Force base in Artsakh, and then we, as Americans, we would not be always so dependent geographically to the Air Force base we have in Turkey, and then that would force the Turks to play nice with us, because now we have another option in the region. What's wrong with that approach?
Well, we've been complaining for 3 weeks, Doctor, that Putin has been sitting on his hands, hasn't really done anything for Armenia. There's this collective security treaty, CSTO, and while we're getting bombarded to death, and while Turkish drones are flying in Armenia proper territory, he refuses to activate that CSTO treaty. We're a little bit peeved at his lackadaisical approach to this. We don't know what it's going to take other than the entire destruction of a race to get him involved. But I'll tell you this, Doctor, if the United States of America came and put an Air Force base in Artsakh, we would see Russia in full force, right on, not on its borders, right inside. I mean, that I think is a brilliant concept, but that I think also could be the precipice of a world war. But I get what you're saying. Armenians have always been trying to balance East versus West, as I tried to allude to, and not so different from the some of the other populations and people from about which we know and the faiths that we share. And some people are thinking, Doctor, that the reason why there's been this recalcitrance, this hesitation, this gun shyness by Putin is because after the Velvet Revolution 2 years ago in Armenia, Prime Minister Pashinyan and his crew of forward-looking, technologically adept, clean-minded, anti-corruption reformers didn't kowtow to him. They didn't come to pay tribute as a vassal state the way that Pashinyan's predecessors. I mean, I've read that. I'm sure you've read that as well. And so maybe some of this hands-offness that isn't sitting right with us is precisely because we haven't been playing by the rules when it comes to always being in supplication of Papa Russia. But I will tell you this, I mean, I accept that we should kick all the tires and see how it is that Armenia can really be a difference maker in the region in the name of ensuring its sovereignty and its security and for generations to come. But this one, I just don't know. I would think that we would get an immediate hostile reaction, and the people to suffer probably again would be the Armenians.
Pashinyan has not been kissing Putin's ring, that's for sure. Although he does, diplomatically offer appropriate words. I mean, he in one of his speeches he said we're not involving the Russians in Artsakh because last time they forced us to give back lands that we had won, and he's absolutely correct. He said we're not going to forget that. But he also very appropriately says kind words and appreciates their involvement, all the appropriate diplomatic steps. Now, as Americans, for example, I have American friends who are telling me, what can we do? What can we do? And, obviously through the ANCA, through the assembly, supporting their activities politically, but I feel like it's not really having an impact. We're not getting the news exposure that we need to be getting. We're not having the political pull. We're not moving the needle on this here in the U.S. And so, what can we do, and what can we get our where should we be pointing our friends? And by the way, Phil has been very good about this here in Houston, about directing us to the things that we need to be doing. And Phil, I want to say I really appreciate your leadership here in the Houston community with this. But let me ask you as well, what should we be doing to move the needle on this to affect U.S. foreign policy?
Is Phil going to take that one?
Yeah, Phil?
I can if you want. I mean, the only way we can affect policy is to call. You know, by my experience with legislatures and legislators, they need to hear from their constituents. They don't need, I mean, I can call congressman, whoever in another state. They're looking at not a constituent, doesn't matter. We have to mobilize, and we have to call, and that's what's great about the ANCA system is that it'll tell you who your congressman is, and all you got to press a button, and they'll send them a letter. They're counting their constituents and how to contact them. That's the only way. Also, raise money. We've got to be a fundraising force. Listen, you know, that's how the Israelis did it. They raised money, and they were an active political force. That's why they get paid attention to in this country. We are a lot of times not so great at that.
Yes, but anyway, let's not turn it into a conversation. I think Mr. Alexandru had a great idea. We need a synergy here because we have one common enemy, Turkey.
Agreed.
Okay, and now the war that is coming to Armenia, it's a war that couldn't come during the summer to Greece. Erdogan realized that he couldn't bite Greece. So he turned his attention to Armenia. Otherwise, Aliyev would not have just out of the blue surprised everybody and attack Artsakh. But Dr. Karamanyan, I have one point that you're making. The United States cannot go to directly and negotiate with the authorities of Nagorno Karabakh about a base, because technically this area still belongs to Azerbaijan. The sovereign authority there is still Azerbaijan. So we have to be very careful. But the base could go to Armenia. And of course,
if America
this has to be in juxtaposition with the defense with the defense agreements of Armenia and Russia. Armen, your opinion?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know what? You should never disagree with the person who can in a button press get rid of me. And so, excuse me, Mano, but it is not part of Azerbaijan. It is not part of the Republic of the Republic of Artsakh is just not part of the Republic of Azerbaijan. It has,
but, you know, I'm saying what basically the Department of the State will say.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. We have dozens of states that are United States that are recognizing the independence of Artsakh through efforts of recognition. You have earmarks from the United States Congress to the Republic of Artsakh for humanitarian reasons. So what they're doing is we're building up a culture of legitimacy.
Yes, certainly.
So that the Republic of Artsakh will ultimately be one of the almost 200 nations now at the United Nations. But I understand what you're saying, and I sort of mentioned it in passing, that the monolithic NATO-led United Nations Old Boys Network, and also which is in bed with the tyrants of the world in that same esteemed body, they haven't given us the light of day in the United Nations. They have recognized the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, but in the end, we haven't brought a case. The UN wasn't passing on it. It was some type of statement. By the same token, They've said that, I mean, Pompeo, our Secretary of State, just the other day, a lot of Armenians were upset because it didn't go far enough. But he says, I'm with the Armenians who are trying to defend themselves against the Azeri aggression. So we should read not only between the lines, but read the lines themselves.
Yeah. There is a question from one of your former students, Armen. Alex Janoyan. He asked, in your opinions, what brings long-term stability and an end to this conflict realistically? And I would like to echo that question. I was also going to ask you about that.
Well,
what do you think?
First, Alex, I don't think that I was his teacher. He may be confusing me with my father, who's been a history professor for more than half a century at UCLA, but I will take the compliment nevertheless. And maybe my father will take the compliment that he's a lot younger than he is now. But long-term stability. Long-term stability, we've heard about this in the business world, Alex. It's managing expectations. And the Republic of Azerbaijan should never harbor an expectation that it will ever claim Artsakh as its own. By the same token, perhaps the Armenians of Artsakh should also manage their expectations that when the dust settles and where a peaceful milieu settles and lowers on every morning and evening in Artsakh, that their neighbor could maybe an Azeri instead of an Armenian, that their children's classmate his name may not be Rafi, but maybe Mehmed. And so we have to condition our populations to allow for peaceful coexistence. I can say categorically that the Armenians, by and large, are ready for that. And I can unfortunately also categorically say that most Azeris and Turks are not. Again, our beef and battle, not with the rank and file of those races, it's with their governments. But when the venom and that poison that I mentioned before has been dripped without being discharged from the hospital, and you have that IV, that the Armenian is the enemy, I just don't know. They need to manage their expectations, Alex. They have to allow, I mean, they have to come to grips with the getting off this pan-turn. I mean, there's so many issues we haven't talked about today. One is Erdogan's, continuation of the Ziya Gökalp's pan-Turnism ideology from the early 20th century. And if you take a look at the puzzle there's not much standing in the way of Erdogan and the far reaches of the Muslim East, other than little old Christian Armenia and even littler still Christian Artsakh.
Yeah, Elias Neophytidis next, who's also from Pontus. So Elias?
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can,
okay.
Yes.
My mother was born in Samsus. My father was born in Russia. His father was born in Trapezus, and I was born in Drama, Greece. I spent from 1963 to now in the Greek community working, and 6 years in the church was service in the 60s, trying to help out. And the only thing I learned that the three most useless organizations to our causes is the Greek Orthodox Church, the Pope, and the United Nations. All they care is about getting money. What we need to do, all of us, write letters. Don't copy a letter that somebody typed and you put your name on it and you send it to your representative. You write the letter by yourself, by your handwriting, as bad as it is, it can't be worse than mine, and you send it in to your representative. And this way they know. And when they're making a collection of money, you can send $10, $20, whatever it is, you send it. Especially the Congress people that do it every 2 years, and they really have a cap as to how much. No one has collected more money to the Cypriots, and look where Cyprus is, in the same place that it was 1974. So, laws of the international laws are only as good as someone that has the power to enforce them. And who's enforcing? Nobody. They're only there for the people that abide the laws and do it. Turkey will do whatever it wants, or whenever it wants, and nobody can stop them. The Armenians have done a great job in the Congress and other areas trying to get, the recognition of the Armenian genocide. Sophia Costas in Philadelphia has done a great job in a book that he has out there, what is called Before the Silence, which is completely full of newspaper ads from 1867 all the way to 1923, American, German, English, Irish, Japan, Canada, all the articles of what was going on during those years in all the killings, all the atrocities of Turkey was going on. There's nobody can dispute that. We need to get those newspapers, and we need to do that. In the 90s, we went to Washington, D.C., about 50 of us, and we handed out, the information to the senators and to the Congress people. And the ones that were from our area, they accepted us very warmly and very happily, and they never seen that. We cannot depend, we don't have the money to depend on lobbyists, but we can put a weekend out of our lives to go out there all together and give out those papers, that information, because believe me, no one is in the dark as much as the politicians, and it's up to us to do it. I am very happy. I sent out an email that I received from the Pambondian societies that collected in the United States $100,000 for Armenia to help out over what's going on there. So our best thing to do is, instead of going to the church and lighting up a candle and putting $5 or $20, send it to Armenia, to the people that need it, and what it's going to do the good for it. That's my thing, and as long as I live, I will be fighting for Armenia, for Cyprus, and for Pontus. Thank you very much. My DNA is 94% Trapezus.
Yeah, I have one quick question. Are there any pipelines going through Artsakh?
Pipelines?
Energy pipelines, like gas or oil pipelines.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Are there any pipelines, oil or gas pipelines coming through Artsakh?
Through Azerbaijan, there are. It's the Caspian pipeline that goes from the Caspian Sea and then up through Georgia, and then
Georgia, okay.
And then it goes east through Turkey, and so they're getting. I mean, it's not even close. It's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz and the Wicked Witch of the East, and then the nice fairy. I mean, I don't want to paint us in a way that we're not that totally innocent, but we are innocent. If Armenians had nefarious designs, would they not have already thought about blowing up that pipeline to cripple the flow of money into Baku so that it could buy Israeli and Turkish and Canadian and other military? The Armenians didn't do that and haven't done that. I don't know if they'll be forced to do that. On the other hand, just a few short months ago, was it not Azerbaijan in July of 2000 that they threatened to blow up our nuclear power plant at Medzamor?
July of 2020.
Right. Did I say something else? Oh, anyway,
no,
yeah.
I think you didn't specify the time.
Oh, yeah, July 2020. That is a violation. That statement, that threat is in violation of international covenants of governance among countries.
Yes. Mr. Homatas asked the question, why doesn't Armenia throw the Russian base out of their country and invite the Americans if Russia does them no good? We discussed this a little bit, so Armen, please be brief.
Well, okay, so I'm not a leader of a country, nor am I a political scientist, but my simplistic view is that Armenia is critically important to Russia. Armenia is one of the last places that they will leave of their own free will. It's a gateway to the West, not so much to the East. And especially because it shares a border now with another empire in the making, at least in some people's minds who run that country. And who would be pushing back against Erdogan's grand machinations of Turkic dominance? It most likely would be Putin, and it would be much less likely that it would be the United States. I don't think that the Soviet Union, that Russia has any appetite to pull up stakes and leave Armenia. That is the cog. That's the cog not only west, I mean, that is that's the fulcrum of so many parts of the world. It all radiates out from there. It radiates out to Eastern Europe, into the the Stans, the Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistans, and then south into the old Mesopotamia and Iraq and into the Middle East. No, Russia is exactly where it wants to be when it's in Armenia.
I have a question. What do we know about the participation of ISIS terrorists on the side of Azerbaijan? How many are they?
They've been documented by President Macron of France, and I would think that a president of any Western country, especially France, would not be going on baseless information.
No, of course not.
There have been, again, public information that I've been following. There have been several encounters with the jihadists who have confessed to being hired in Syria, trained by the Turks, paid by the Turks, ferried then to that part of the world, given a pittance of $1,000 or $2,000, being promised that they are only going to serve on the back line, only to find out that they are being thrown to the front. And then they become totally despondent, in utter despair, because they understand that the Armenian is not going to give up her land, ever. And so they run away, the ones that don't get killed. But there's ample evidence on the internet and also by heads of state, and one would think it's based on ample evidence that there are ISIS jihadists, mercenaries. Again, the use of mercenaries, not again, but the use of mercenaries is a crime against international compacts. Many international law violations are happening on a daily basis over there, and we're trying to take account of them, working with the Ombudsman of the Republic of Armenia, Arman Tatoyan, the Ombudsman, he's the human rights defender of the Republic of Artsakh, Artsakh Beglarian, who are documenting, who are cataloging the weapons that are being used that fall to destroy schools and homes of worship. The Armenian Bar Association, especially its Armenian Rights Watch Committee, is on a daily basis in contact with him as an assistive mechanism and apparatus to help get the word out and marshal that evidence of continuing crimes against humanity.
Mm-hmm. I have one question. When you showed the map of the Wilsonian, Wilsonian President Wilson, Woodrow Wilson map of the Armenian mandate, you also showed that you could, for those who understand a little bit the geography, Artsakh was part of Greater Armenia, but also the areas west of Artsakh that are presently, when you saw in the maps, they were shown not to be Armenian. Those used to be part of Armenia. So between 1923 and the late 1980s, when Soviet Union breaks up, what happened to the Armenian population there? And all of a sudden, Artsakh was surrounded by Azeris.
So when the Armenians were, you're saying when they had the independent autonomous oblast, what happened?
During the time of 1918, basically.
So they had their own local administrative bodies. They had their own local schools and churches and hospitals. They lived as a civil society. They lived in a multilingual area where there were mosques in Aghdam, let's say, and there were churches in Shushi. There was coexistence, but not always peaceful. When the Azeris sometimes were incited from Baku to go ahead and unleash some of the fury. But from the 1920s, Mano, to the 1980s, let's also remember that one could not really, in that day and age, express his or her nationalism per se, because we were living under the boot of the Soviet Union. And so they wanted to crush nationalism and create a horizontal, supposedly horizontal relationship where neither language, nor faith, nor identity. In fact, when I used to go to Armenia in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, not many people went to church over there. Not many Armenians got baptized because the Soviet state didn't allow it. I'm sure the same is true of the Muslim experience. And so while the Armenians and Turks, or Azeris, because they're a Turkic people, lived side by side in Artsakh, or at that time Nagorno Karabakh, there wasn't an accentuation of nationality until it came to a head in the 1980s.
But how did the areas west of Artsakh that are now have been cleaned up with a almost 10-year war in the 90s? There used to be Azeris there. Now these areas are part of Artsakh. How did they end up being exclusively Azeris in these areas before the breakup of Soviet Union?
Well, I don't know.
Did the Soviets move population around?
Yeah, they were not exclusively Azeri. I was in those areas in the 1980s, whether we're talking about Lachin or Kelbajar or some other areas. There were mixed villages there. No one has, ever said that, oh, it's ours because we're 100% of the population. No, the Turks came from the steppes, 1,000 years ago, or however many 100 years ago, several thousand years after we were there, the Seljuks at least. And so they had settlements over there, and there was a coexistence. There were not those areas. Now I'm imagining in my mind what you're talking about is those areas just west of Stepanakert and Artsakh before you get to Armenia. How did they even get to be all Azeri before they became all non-Azeri, which they are all non-Azeri now, because those are among the security corridors. There, it really doesn't show. Well, it does show if you take a little left from that white dot at that first border there, perhaps that may be there. But we have to understand that this was an area that's been disputed for a long time. There were Azeri settlements there, but that doesn't trump the legality of the Republic of Artsakh's actions in 1998, 1991, and then even now, in retrospect, there's a concept called remedial secession. So let's just say that, you know what, that 1988 election where we said that we wanted to get Armenia, Artsakh wanted to connect to Armenia, you know what? False, fraudulent, illegal. Okay, 1991 election that we, the Republic of Artsakh, want to be secede from the Soviet Union, even though it was right down the middle of the highway of the Soviet Constitution. Let's just say, no, false, fraudulent, bad. You can't, they're still under international law, a concept which I'll simplify. It's called remedial secession. That even if today Artsakh were a recognized part of Azerbaijan, which it's not, but assume that hypothetically, there are certain requirements that have been met here to satisfy our Artsakh saying that we are free and independent as a remedy against crimes that are committed against it by aggressor states, especially their own state.
Pretty much like South Sudan.
Yes.
A quick analogy that I can think of what you described. Yannis Remediakis has one question. Yanni, and we need to get ready to wrap up, of course, because you're muted. Unmute.
Mine is rather simple question. So by just looking on today's, let's say, map of Artsakh, looks like an island within Azerbaijan, although it's very close to Armenia. So when people want to go from Artsakh to Armenia and back and forth, how this thing is done? Do they, in order to go through the Azerbaijan land, they have to go through passport control? How is it working?
So, Yannis, this is how it works. Azerbaijan bombed the Stepanakert airport, the airport in the capital, and in violation of yet another international law, has said that if any flight from Moscow, from Yerevan, from Tehran, from anywhere lands tries to land in Stepanakert, they're going to shoot that civilian plane out of the sky. Number one. Again, a clear, blatant, egregious violation of law. During the 30-year-ago war, the Armenians created a land bridge between Artsakh and Armenia. So now you go directly by car from Yerevan, the capital, to Stepanakert, the capital of Artsakh, is approximately a 5-hour car ride. So that I don't know. I would guess, and maybe Phil, you know offhand better. I would guess it's like 300 miles or so. Oh, that's pretty good right there. Yeah.
No, that's
but I'll tell you, it really interestingly, we talked about de facto signposts of sovereignty. And what does it mean to be your own country? Well, when you drive across Yannis from Armenian territory to Artsakh territory, you go through a checkpoint. And those soldiers are wearing the flag of the Republic of Artsakh. You give your passport over, and they stamp it with the Republic of Artsakh stamp and not the Republic of Armenia. So it is carrying itself outwardly as a worthy, not candidate, but participant as a sovereign nation.
I see.
Well, I think I don't see any other questions.
And
I
would suggest that either we not do the second video or we just close with that video with.
I think we can close with that video.
Not even with any commentary. Excuse me. No commentary. No. Let the stories of these people try to resonate with you. Someone was asking, Ara, what you were asking, what can we we do, the way we can do something is making something, a small story, into a big one. To talk about the day, a day in the life of somebody and what happened. You're going to see what happened in the day of the life of a couple people in this video, which was done by Vice News, one of the few foreign correspondents that went over, some of you have already seen it, that went over to Artsakh last week. And maybe, I guess, the most poetically justifiable ending is that there be no commentary at the end. And if that's the case, I want to just thank the Hellenic Cultural Society and the Armenian National Committee and the Armenian Bar Association, and each and every one of you whom I wish to befriend and have an opportunity to continue relations with.
Yeah, but I think probably the most important thing we spoke today and came out is that at least we here in the United States, to the extent that we can exert pressure as a country, we need to be reunited and try to maximize, be united, have Greeks, Cypriots, Armenians. We are the three Christian nations attacked by Turkey. And one is being right now axed, Armenia. We really need to have unity and synergy in action. Because with unity, we can maximize our political and lobbying efforts here in the United States. And I think it's time. Our communities have rich people. It's time for them to open their pockets. With $20 and $10, I'm sorry, you only do food pantry if you can even do that. We really need to have a little bit more synergy. I'm going to close with a video, but before closing, I want to thank Armen. You spoke like a great orator, very reminiscent of Daniel Webster, the greatest US Congress orator of the 19th century, who was a great advocate of the Greek Revolution. Actually, he even coined the idea that the United States should support financially the Greek war for independence.
Mano,
he
I
was so good that they love to go and watch him from the gallery.
Mano, I would like to make a suggestion to get a meeting
quickly, Elias, because we need to show the video.
With the HCC and the Armenian community, that we should have a meeting after this and get together and see how we can do joint events and joint fights.
Joint action now. We need joint action.
Joint action.
Thank you, Philip, also.
So, Yanni, I think it's up to you to get this done, and we can all get together and continue this.
Not only that, but I need to say to Armenia and to all our friends from Armenia that we are in the process of creating a much larger unity in the Greek organizations, and I need to bring this message to them. It's all over the United States and all over the globe, as a matter of fact. And maybe we can have some discussions on how we can expand it in a nationwide, global level, and unite the two diaspora people from Armenia as well as from Greece. And all together we can hopefully do something.
Certainly. Thank you, Armen. Let's give a hand to Philip and Armen. And thank you, Viken. Viken, the video. I think we can close with that, and as soon as the video finishes, I'm going to end the meeting. Okay?
Thank you.
Silently.
Pleasure meeting all of you.
Stories talk.
Of stock.
We can make sure you have a sound.
Yeah.
We have to go. We're not scared, and we don't think about our life right now. We think about our country. That's the only thing.
You ready to die for Nagorno Karabakh?
Ready. Everybody is ready. Everybody here is ready.
These Armenian army reservists are heading to the front line of a fight they see as a threat to their very existence. A dispute with Azerbaijan over the breakaway region of Nagorno Karabakh. Nearly 3 decades of cross-border conflict between the two sides turned into an all-out war in September. Is this your younger brother or older brother?
Younger brother.
And you are also going to go to
Of course.
Nagorno Karabakh. When are you going?
A few days, 2 or 3 days.
You're fighting, your brother's going to go fight, your father's fighting. Isn't your mother worried about you guys? Aren't you scared?
No, we aren't scared. We aren't scared. We are very proud that we are going to protect our country. We know how to fight, yes, you know, and everybody here was served. We are not scared about war. We want peace for all over the world. But if they try our lands or our culture or our families, we will try to protect, and we will protect.
What about the Azerbaijanis on the other side, who might say the same thing?
We don't start this war. I think that they are going to repeat the genocide, and that's why here everybody are going to the army, but they go because there is no choice.
For these young soldiers, the 1915 genocide, in which Ottoman Turks killed 1.5 million Armenians, is still very much an open wound. Now, Armenians are fighting to prevent Azerbaijan, Turkey's close ally, from taking control of Nagorno Karabakh. During the fall of the USSR, the two former Soviet republics fought a bloody war for the territory. The fighting ended with a 1994 ceasefire after more than 30,000 people were killed, hundreds of thousands displaced, and Armenian forces left in control of Nagorno Karabakh and surrounding areas. Nearly every country in the world recognizes the territory as part of Azerbaijan, despite its majority ethnic Armenian population, who want either independence or to join Armenia. Azerbaijan's president says his country won't accept anything short of the full withdrawal of Armenian forces from the area.
Biz dəfələrlə bəyan etmişik ki, Dağlıq Qarabağ əzəli tarixi Azərbaycan torpağıdır.
I've never seen anything quite like this. Just behind me is the border with Azerbaijan. A lot of people are headed in the direction of Nagorno Karabakh, and all of the cars that are driving on this road are driving with their lights off because they're scared that they're going to be seen by Azerbaijani soldiers on the other side of the border and possibly fired upon. 2 weeks into the war, and the destruction in Nagorno Karabakh's de facto capital, Stepanakert, is already widespread. So, as you can see, these vehicles are severely damaged by the shelling and the rocket attacks that have been happening all day long. There's black smoke over in the distance. It has been near constant bombardment of the city, Stepanakert, since the morning. Armo, a store owner in central Stepanakert, says he narrowly avoided a rocket strike that completely destroyed his neighbor's home. Wow.
Ոչ լույս ունենք, ոչ գազ ունենք, ոչ ջուր ունենք, ոչ էլ հաց ունենք։ Լավա։ Չարմոնքա, ոչինչ, սաղ ենք, սաղ ենք։
While there's been attacks on both sides, oil-rich Azerbaijan purchases sophisticated military technology, including drones, from Israel and Turkey that clearly give it the upper hand. Azerbaijan doesn't report military casualties, but Armenia does, and it says it's lost more than 350 soldiers. The fear of Azerbaijan retaking control of Nagorno-Karabakh has also drawn in the Armenian diaspora. Dr. Armen Hakobjanian is a surgeon who flew from Los Angeles 2 days earlier. What are the extent of the injuries you're seeing as a result of Azerbaijani attacks here in the hospital?
Absolutely massive. These are not a simple injury that these kids are suffering. Those are 20, 25-year-old kids that are going to defend their own home. They're defending their own country, and they're being blown to pieces by 21st century mighty weapons.
I'm sure you have quite a comfortable life as a surgeon working in Los Angeles. Was it hard to leave that behind and come here to a war zone?
No, the hardest thing was just to explain to your parents, to your wife, and to your kids that you have to come here and help other kids. That was the most difficult part.
What actually pushed you? Okay, okay. All right.
This is a reality. Usually we get a little siren, so we know we need to go into the bunker. But sometimes siren doesn't work. So we get the bomb before the siren. But that's okay. We're getting used to it.
Getting used to the non-stop bombardment means civilians are abandoning the streets and taking cover underground in some of the same shelters they built 30 years ago. How often are you hearing this sound these days?
Very often, about 30 minutes.
You're not scared?
No,
Why not?
because I'm strong woman. I burn when we have the first war, and when my first words, I say go down. They are shooting. They are bombing.
Sona Hambard Zumya is a lawyer and university lecturer.
We have to go down.
When the war started, she sent her 9-year-old son to be with relatives in Armenia. But it'd be so easy for you to just get in the car now, to escape this war, go to Yerevan with your son.
Yes.
Why do you choose to stay?
Հայ եմ եւ այն հայությունը, այն հայի գենը, այն հայ արյունը, որ ինձ տվել է Արցախ աշխարհը, ես պիտի ծառայեցնեմ Արցախի համար։
Please, after you. Like Sona, Armina Alexanian grew up in this conflict. She's now the deputy foreign minister of Nagorno Karabakh. What do people here want?
People here want peace. People here want to be able to live in their homes in the way they want to live it, their lives. We have to fight for the very right to exist.
If it's as you say, why is the international community almost unanimous in its refusal to recognize the independence or the Armenian connection of Karabakh?
We have nothing to offer, I guess. We don't have the Azeri oil. We don't have the Azeri caviar. We don't use laundromat to bribe European politicians. Azerbaijan is succeeding because it has got the resources, it has got the money, and it can actually use the oil cart to threaten some countries by doing it.
Right now, Azerbaijan, the military is moving in on many fronts. They're bombing all of Karabakh. What happens in the worst case scenario for you if they take control of this territory?
I don't really like answering hypothetical questions, but I don't even consider that question. Because if I don't think of it as something possible, I will never give in. And that's the mindset of every single Karabakhi who lives here. That's why we're still here, even though they're attacking, even though they want to kill us, but we're gonna stay here.
As we prepared to leave, the bombing intensified. The underground bunkers no longer felt safe, and civilians began to flee en masse to Armenia. Among those who left was Sona. We met her again at her sister's home. One stop on her journey to Armenia's capital, Yerevan. Last time we met a few nights ago, you said that you would never leave. What happened that made you finally decide you had to leave?
Ոչ մի ապաստարան չի կարող փրկել այդ ամենը եւ ոչ մի ապաստարան ոչ երկնքում ոչ երկրում երկրի վրա հողի մեջ չի կարող այդ հանգստությունը լինել այդ փրկությունը լինել որպեսզի դու կարողանաս փրկվել եւ երբ նկուղում էինք լույսերը անջատվեցին այդ հրթիռակոծությունը սկսեց անընդհատ 1 2 3 4 եւ ոչ մի դադար չէր այսպես չէր լինում չէր դադարում այդ ամենը Երբ երեխան մորը գրկել էր ու աղաչում էր, որ այդտեղից դուրս հանեին նրանց, որովհետև հնարավոր է, որ այս հաստ պատերը եւս փլվեն նրանց վրա, երբ որ մայրս վախից ոչինչ չէր խոսում, երբ որ հայրս ծերանում էր աչքիս առջև, ես մտածեցի, որ ես պետք է դուրս գամ այստեղից եւ պետք է նրանց ժպիտի առիթներ թողնեմ եւ կարողանամ ժպիտներ պարգևել նրանց.
Do you think that you will be able to go back to Stepanakert soon?
Yes. Այո, ես հավատում եմ դրան. Գուցե մի քիչ անհավատալի է, գուցե մի քիչ հեքիաթային է, գուցե մի քիչ ռոմանտիկ է հնչում այդ ամենը, բայց ես վստահ եմ, անգամ եթե հող լինի այնտեղ, մենք վերադառնալու ենք, մենք կառուցելու ենք, մենք ապրելու ենք, ծնելու ենք.
Thank you everybody for watching, for staying with us until late. It's 9:30. On the chat, we have the video links for the two videos we played together. We'll leave the chat and therefore the meeting open a little bit for you to be able to copy and paste those links if you're interested in. Please join us for our next Cafe Neon. We don't have a date yet, but probably we're going to do one in the first week of November for with this time the entrance of Greece in the Second World War for October 28th, the first few days of the war. But this is going to be a Cafe Neon mostly, again talking about exactly the same problem. Turkey, aggression, the general area. Thank you very much. We hope that all those who go to war from both sides, because mothers and fathers are for all humans, and the Armenians and the Azeris have children that go to war. And the worst thing that can happen is for parents to bury their children. We hope that this will stop. The solution will not come soon, but I hope this will stop.
And thank you again to everybody.
Thank you.
Bari Kisher. Good night.
Καληνύχτα σε όλους. Good night to everyone.